A wife travels to Rome for her mother-in-law's grand birthday dinner, only to find out her seat is missing and the family mocks her. Instead of creating a scene, she calmly walks away, and 30 minutes later, the family discovers she canceled the entire event. The venue, catering, everything. Their celebration crumbles, while her revenge feels sweeter than any toast. It was supposed to be a night of family, celebration, and togetherness. Rome, with its golden lights and timeless streets, had been chosen for my mother-in-law's grand birthday dinner. The air buzzed with anticipation as relatives flew in from different countries, all to honor her milestone. Every detail was meticulously planned. The lavish venue overlooking the Colosseum, the polished silverware gleaming on long tables, the carefully chosen menu that promised luxury with every course. But for me, the evening began with a silence so loud, it cut deeper than any insult. As I entered the venue, dressed with care, my eyes scanned the long table that stretched across the hall. Candles flickered, glasses clinked, laughter echoed. Yet my seat, the one spot where I should have belonged, was missing. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a simple oversight. But then I heard it. My husband, standing among his family, smirked and chuckled. "Oops, guess we miscounted." His words, dripping with casual cruelty, were followed by laughter. My mother-in-law's sharp gaze slid over me, as if I were nothing more than an uninvited guest. A few cousins exchanged amused glances, whispering behind raised hands. The humiliation burned. My chest tightened as every chuckle echoed louder, digging into me like daggers. I stood there, frozen between disbelief and anger. In that moment, I could have exploded, shouted, demanded respect. But instead, I drew in a slow breath, steadied my voice, and said calmly, "Seems I'm not family after all." My words landed like glass shattering on marble. For a fleeting second, the laughter faltered, replaced by stunned silence. But no one spoke. No one corrected the insult. So I turned on my heels and walked out. The Roman night embraced me with its cool air, and every step away from that glittering hall felt both heavy and freeing. Behind me, I could still hear faint laughter, as though they believed I'd simply sulk, maybe cry, but eventually fade into the background like I always had. They had no idea what was about to come, because while they toasted to exclusion, I was about to rewrite the evening. You see, in my hands lay the power they had underestimated. For weeks, I had been the silent architect of this grand celebration. I had been the one coordinating with the event planners, the caterers, the musicians, even the floral decorators. My name, my signature, was on every booking, every deposit, every final confirmation. While they mocked me for being miscounted, they forgot who had counted every detail of this night. 30 minutes. That was all it took. 30 minutes for calls to be made, for instructions to be given, for contracts under my authority to be revoked. The grand dinner that sparkled under chandeliers would soon collapse, not because of bad luck, not because of an accident, but because I chose to end it. Back in a hall, they raised their glasses, oblivious. My husband laughed louder. His mother basked in attention. The family enjoyed their little show at my expense. Plates of appetizers began to circulate, wine poured freely, and music swelled. They had no clue that the ground beneath their celebration was crumbling, second by second. Then, the cracks appeared. First, the waiters whispered nervously to each other, trays halting in midair. Dishes meant for the first course stopped arriving. The manager, pale and sweating, stepped in to murmur something to my mother-in-law. Confusion spread like a virus across the table. Soon, the truth unfolded. The venue was no longer reserved. The catering had been called off. The band, halfway through their setup, packed their instruments and left. Every contract, every arrangement had been canceled. The deposits, mine to control, were gone. Chaos erupted. My mother-in-law's proud smile collapsed into horror. My husband's laughter froze on his lips as realization struck. Relatives looked around in disbelief as the glamorous night dissolved before their eyes. Plates were snatched away, lights dimmed, and staff scrambled with apologies. And me? I was far away, sitting at a quiet cafe in the heart of Rome, sipping espresso as the city lights flickered around me. My phone buzzed with frantic messages, missed calls from my husband, desperate texts from relatives, half-written apologies, angry demands. I let the phone rest on the table, untouched, while a small smile curved on my lips. For years, they had treated me as if I were invisible, the outsider tolerated but never embraced. Tonight, they tried to humiliate me publicly, stripping away the dignity I carried. But instead of breaking, I chose to remind them that I was not powerless. Their faces, I later learned, turned ghostly white. Guests who had flown across oceans sat in stunned silence as the reality sank in. There would be no grand dinner, no celebratory speeches, no clinking glasses. The birthday that was meant to shine became an unforgettable disaster, etched into family memory for all the wrong reasons. Revenge had never tasted so sweet. Because sometimes silence is stronger than screams. Sometimes calmness carries more weight than anger. And sometimes the sweetest justice isn't in raising your voice. It's in letting the walls they built around you collapse with a single decision. That night in Rome, I walked away not as the forgotten wife, not as the excluded outsider, but as the woman who proved that dignity is not given, it is claimed. And they would never forget it. The echoes of that night didn't end when the dinner collapsed. If anything, the true storm began afterward. In the hours that followed, my phone continued to light up with call after call. At first, it was my husband, his messages frantic, alternating between anger and desperation. "Where are you? Come back now. What have you done?" Then came the calls from his relatives, each one laced with blame, shock, or hurried attempts at reconciliation. But I didn't answer, because answering would have given them what they wanted, a chance to twist the story, to paint me as the villain, to justify their cruelty by making me the problem. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Not anymore. Instead, I walked through the narrow streets of Rome, where laughter spilled from cafes and music played from hidden corners. The city, alive and free, seemed to celebrate my quiet rebellion. And with every step, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in the shadows of their disdain. I was standing above it, watching them unravel in chaos of their own making. Later that night, I returned to the hotel room. My husband was waiting, pacing like a caged animal. His face was flushed, his tie loosened, his eyes burning with fury. "How could you?" he demanded, the moment I stepped through the door. I placed my bag on the table and looked at him evenly. "How could I? You let them laugh at me. You let them exclude me. And you stood there, as if it was a joke." "It was just a mistake," he shot back, though his voice cracked under the weight of guilt. "You ruined everything. Do you realize how embarrassed my family is right now?" I let the words hang in the air before replying softly, "Good. Now you know how I felt. Every time you let them treat me as less than family, every time you chose silence over standing beside me. Tonight wasn't just about me being excluded. Tonight was about years of disrespect." His mouth opened, but no defense came, because deep down he knew it was true. For the next few days, whispers spread through the family like wildfire. Some tried to blame me entirely, calling me heartless, cruel, unforgiving. But others, surprisingly, stayed silent. Because even they knew what happened wasn't born in a single night. It was the result of years of piling insults, dismissive remarks, and being treated as though I were invisible. My act wasn't sudden madness. It was the final response to wounds they had inflicted for far too long. I heard from friends of friends that my mother-in-law refused to leave her room for days. The humiliation of a ruined birthday in front of guests from around the world was more than her pride could handle. My husband, cornered between loyalty to me and fear of his family, tried to play both sides. But every time he demanded I apologize, I simply looked at him and asked, "Did you ever demand they apologize to me?" He had no answer. The truth is, revenge is never about destruction. It's about balance. And in balancing the scales, I had done more than cancel a dinner. I had forced them to face the reality they spent years ignoring. I was not weak. I was not disposable, and I would no longer play the silent outsider. Weeks passed, and the ripples of that night continued to grow. The story became a point of gossip in extended family circles, a tale retold with shock and disbelief. Some called me ruthless. Others secretly admired the courage it took to stand up against an entire household. And slowly, very slowly, the power dynamic shifted. My mother-in-law, once so quick to dismiss me, began to tread carefully in her words. My husband, though still caught in the middle, realized that ignoring me came at a cost he could no longer afford. Family gatherings became quieter, more restrained. And though the tension still lingered like smoke after a fire, there was one undeniable truth: they would never dare humiliate me again.
But the story didn't end with their shame.
It ended with my freedom, because that night in Rome had shown me something vital. I didn't need their acceptance to define my worth. I didn't need their seat at the table to prove my place. My dignity, my value, my strength, they were mine to claim, with or without them. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't watching others crumble. It's standing tall while they realize they can no longer bend you. Months later, when people asked about that infamous birthday, my husband would change the subject, my mother-in-law would look away, and relatives would whisper in hushed tones.
But me?
I would smile, not because of the chaos, but because of the calm power that came afterward. They thought excluding me would make me disappear. Instead, it made me unforgettable. And in the end, that was the sweetest victory of all.